The quiet neighborhood of Maplewood in suburban Ohio was bathed in April's gentle sunlight. Marjorie Collins gazed out the kitchen window at her garden, smiling as she watched her husband Ethan and daughter Lisa playing happily together. Marjorie's serene eyes reflected her deep attachment to this ordinary but happy daily life. "Mom. Look. Dad fixed the swing for me." Lisa's silvery voice echoed from the garden, and Marjorie waved back. Next Sunday, Lisa would celebrate her 7th birthday. Though small, she was a bright and thoughtful child who served as the sunshine of the Collins household. "That's wonderful," Marjorie replied, shifting her gaze to the steam rising from her ceramic mug of tea. At that moment, the doorbell rang, causing her to look up with a slightly surprised expression. The delivery man handed her a large box. The moment she saw the return address, Marjorie's lips tightened. It was a package from her parents, Garrett and Eleanor Huntington, who lived in Florida. "What arrived?" asked Ethan, returning from the garden while wiping his hands. His question carried light curiosity mixed with a subtle tension. "It's from Mother and Father," Marjorie answered quietly. "Perhaps a birthday present for Lisa." Ethan's blue eyes darkened for just a moment. After 10 years of marriage, he should have grown accustomed to the complex relationship with Marjorie's parents, but the subtle atmosphere they created could not be ignored. Coming from a middle-class family, Ethan had always implicitly felt that Marjorie's wealthy family considered him not good enough for her. "Shall we open it?" Ethan's voice carried a deliberately manufactured cheerfulness. Marjorie shook her head. "Let's wait until Lisa's birthday. It'll be a surprise." That night, after Lisa had gone to bed, Marjorie sighed to her husband in their bedroom. "I got a call from my parents. They can't come for Lisa's birthday." Ethan sat on the bed and asked, "Another social engagement?" His tone contained bitterness, but also kindness that tried to hide it. "The usual charity gala. But they said what's in the box is something special. A family heirloom that's been passed down for generations." Ethan nodded silently. Marjorie rested her head on his shoulder, immersed in complex emotions. She loved her parents. However, she always questioned their attitude that valued social status and prestige above all else. For her parents, their son-in-law's true worth was judged not by his warmth or sincerity, but by the figures in his bank account and his titles. "I wonder what they sent," Ethan said, gently squeezing her hand and offering a smile. On the morning of the birthday, Lisa woke with excitement too big for her small body. The living room was decorated with colorful balloons, and a homemade chocolate cake sat on the table. Lisa was delighted with the presents from her parents. "There's one more," Marjorie said, bringing out the large box. "This is a present from Grandma and Grandpa." Lisa opened the box with curiosity and took out a small jewelry-like case. "Wow, it's beautiful." Inside the case was an old wristwatch. The silver face was engraved with delicate patterns, and the brown leather band had a softness that came from years of use. A letter was included alongside it. Marjorie opened the envelope marked, "For someone special only," and read her parents' message aloud. "Dear Lisa, this watch is a treasure that has been passed down through generations of Huntington women. Your mother once wore it too. Now it's your turn. May this watch bring you good fortune. With love, Grandpa and Grandma." Lisa's eyes sparkled, and she immediately tried to wrap the watch around her wrist. Marjorie felt a strange discomfort. She had no memory of ever wearing this watch herself. Nevertheless, seeing her daughter's happy expression, she suppressed that feeling. "It suits you," Marjorie smiled, but her eyes remained fixed on the watch. The sight of the worn metal wrapped around a 7-year-old's thin arm seemed somehow unnatural. But perhaps that was just a mother's needless worry. Seeing the pure joy in Lisa's eyes should have dispelled such concerns. Ethan lit the candles on the cake, and the family of 3 prayed for Lisa's future happiness. A week had passed since the birthday. Lisa had not once tried to remove the wristwatch from her grandparents. From morning until bedtime, the old watch remained wrapped around the little girl's thin wrist. Marjorie had gently suggested several times, "You should take it off when you bathe," but Lisa firmly shook her head. "Grandma told me this watch is special, so I have to wear it all the time." Marjorie frowned. She hadn't heard of such instructions from her parents. She considered calling to confirm, but instinctively decided it wasn't necessary. It wasn't unusual for children to become attached to new presents. With time, Lisa's enthusiasm would probably cool down. At dinner, Ethan lowered his gaze to Lisa's wristwatch. "You really like that watch, don't you?" he said calmly. His expression was gentle, but a subtle tension lingered in his voice. "Yes. It's a special present from Grandpa and Grandma," Lisa answered happily, stroking the watch face. Ethan nodded silently, exchanging glances with Marjorie. No words passed between them, but they shared feelings. Ethan was making an effort not to voice his complex feelings about the gift from his in-laws. To preserve the family peace. That night, once Lisa's breathing could be heard from the children's room, Marjorie nestled against Ethan in bed. "You seem busy lately," she said softly. Ethan looked up from his book and smiled with a tired expression. "A bit. We've got a new project. Don't overdo it." Marjorie placed her hand over his. Ethan worked in architectural design, and though talented, he worked at a small design firm rather than a large corporation. His income was stable, but far from the success Marjorie's parents desired. Still, his sincerity and kindness were why Marjorie loved him. "Has your father contacted you?" Ethan suddenly asked. Marjorie was a little surprised. "No, why?" Ethan shrugged. "Just wondering." However, Marjorie sensed something behind that, just wondering. The next morning, after Ethan had left for work, she accidentally found a bank statement on his desk. It showed records of regular monthly transfers. Seeing the recipient's name, Marjorie gasped. Garrett Huntington, her father. With disbelief, Marjorie investigated the bank records further. For the past 2 years, Ethan had been sending money to his in-laws every month, an amount that was certainly not small for their household budget. Why had he kept quiet about this? And why were her parents hiding that they needed financial assistance? Amidst the questions swirling in her head, Lisa returned home from school. Usually, her daughter would come bouncing in energetically, but today she seemed a bit down. "What's wrong, honey?" Marjorie asked worriedly. Lisa rubbed her arm as she answered. "The watch spot is itchy." Marjorie removed her daughter's watch and checked the skin underneath. There was a slight redness, but it might have just been from friction. "Let's give it a rest," she said, placing the watch on the table. A look of anxiety crossed Lisa's face. "But Grandma." "It's okay," Marjorie said with gentle firmness. "Just for a little while. Let's take a bath and let your arm rest." That evening, when Marjorie was alone with Ethan after dinner, she asked about the transfer records she had found. Ethan's expression clouded. "So you knew," he sighed. "I was planning to tell you, someday." "Can you explain?" Marjorie's voice contained no accusation, only a desire to understand. After a long silence, Ethan began to speak. 2 years ago, he had accidentally learned that his in-laws were in financial distress. However, with their pride, they refused to ask their daughter and son-in-law for help. Ethan had contacted Garrett directly and offered regular assistance. They adamantly refused at first, Ethan smiled wryly. "Especially your father." But the situation was serious. Eventually, they accepted my help with the promise that no one would know. Marjorie squeezed her husband's hand. To think that Ethan had gone to such lengths for her family. Despite her parents outwardly looking down on him. "I had no idea you were helping my parents," tears welled in Marjorie's eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to worry you," Ethan answered quietly. "Besides, your father didn't want you to know he was accepting money. I wanted to respect his pride." Marjorie was enveloped in complex emotions, anger at her parents' false attitude, and gratitude and love for her husband's generosity. But what broke the silence of that night was a moan from the children's room. Lisa was tossing in her sleep. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and her small body moved restlessly on the bed. "She must be having a bad dream," Marjorie said, stroking her daughter's hair. Lisa didn't wake, but her troubled voice calmed a little. Marjorie noticed the watch on the table beside her daughter's bed. Had Lisa gone to retrieve it herself before sleeping? The next morning, Lisa complained of a headache at breakfast. Marjorie decided to keep her home from school and, as a precaution, arranged to see the local pediatrician, Dr. Carter. "I don't see any particular problems," Dr. Carter said calmly after completing the examination. "It's probably just a minor condition during the growth process. Watch her for a few days, and contact me again if there are any changes." Leaving the examination room, Marjorie glanced at the watch wrapped around Lisa's arm. The doctor hadn't mentioned anything about it, but a mother's intuition quietly issued a warning within Marjorie. There was something unnatural about that watch, such thoughts were creeping into her heart. On Sunday night, a week after the birthday, Marjorie and Ethan went to bed early. They had visited the zoo as a family that day, and all three were wrapped in pleasant fatigue. Lisa went to bed right after dinner, falling asleep before Marjorie could even read her a picture book. "Today was really fun," Marjorie said, snuggling up to Ethan in bed. Ethan smiled and gently kissed his wife's hair. Yes, seeing Lisa's smile makes all worries vanish. They discussed their daughter's recent behavior a bit. Though Lisa was energetic during the day, she had sometimes started to have nightmares at night. Also, the redness on her arm kept appearing and disappearing. But Dr. Carter had said there was no need to worry particularly. Children's skin is sensitive, after all. "Maybe the watch band doesn't suit her skin," Marjorie said vaguely. "Should we go buy a new band tomorrow?" Ethan suggested. In the middle of that conversation, they both fell asleep. Outside the window, the full moon shone, dyeing the quiet darkness of night silver. At 2 a.m, a sudden scream echoed throughout the house. "No! No!" Marjorie jumped up. Ethan also sat up at the same time, and without exchanging words, they both rushed to the children's room. Opening the door, they saw Lisa writhing on the bed in the dim light. "Mom, take this off." "No, it's scary." Lisa was crying out while violently shaking her left arm. When Marjorie rushed over, her daughter looked at her with terror-filled eyes and begged, "Take it off, take it off." "What's scary?" Marjorie asked while embracing Lisa. The watch is talking to me." With a scary voice. Lisa answered, trembling. Marjorie looked at Lisa's arm. The skin around the wristwatch was abnormally red and swollen. "Like a burn." "Ethan, turn on the light." When the light came on, an even more shocking sight met their eyes. Lisa's entire arm was red and swollen, with small blisters beginning to form. The metal part of the watch seemed to be biting into her skin. "We need to remove it right away," Ethan's voice was tense. Marjorie carefully reached for the watch's buckle. The moment she touched it, she felt something wrong. The metal felt hotter than normal. She carefully undid the buckle and removed the watch from her daughter's arm. On Lisa's arm, a vivid red mark followed the shape of the watch. Parts of the skin were beginning to peel, and blisters were scattered across it. "Something's wrong," Marjorie said quietly but firmly. "This isn't a normal allergic reaction." Ethan nodded silently and quickly took action. "I'll get the first aid kit. And a cold towel." While Marjorie gently wiped Lisa's arm with cold water, her daughter began to calm down. However, the color of fear remained in her eyes. "What did the watch say?" Marjorie asked quietly. Lisa answered with trembling lips. "It said, go home. It said, go to your real home." Marjorie and Ethan looked at each other. There was something beyond a child's imagination in Lisa's words. And they intuitively understood the meaning of those words, real home. "Should we go to the emergency room?" Ethan suggested. Marjorie thought deeply and made a decision. "No. Let's go to the police first." Ethan showed a slightly surprised expression, but seeing the determination in his wife's eyes, he nodded silently. "Get Lisa changed." "I'll prepare the bags," Marjorie said, and carefully placed the watch in a plastic bag. 10 minutes later, all three were in the car. Lisa sat in the back seat, her arm bandaged, wrapped in Marjorie's coat. Her small body sometimes trembled, but having been freed from the watch, she clearly showed an expression of relief. "Are we going to the police?" Lisa asked in a small voice. "Yes, honey. The watch might have something bad in it, so we need experts to examine it, Marjorie explained as calmly as possible. The police station at midnight was unexpectedly bustling. Night shift officers were busy moving about, and several citizens sat in chairs waiting. The female officer at the reception desk, Officer Turner, listened carefully to Marjorie's story. "Your child had an allergic reaction to a wristwatch," she said to confirm. "No, I don't think it's just an allergy," Marjorie said, offering the plastic bag containing the watch. "This watch was a gift from my parents, but it caused an abnormal reaction on my daughter's arm. And my daughter says she hears voices from the watch." Officer Turner's expression changed. She carefully observed the watch through the plastic bag and called another officer. After a short conversation in a room beside the desk, instead of the uniformed officer, a man in plain clothes appeared. Detective Branson, he introduced himself and led the Collins family to a small interview room. "Could you tell me the details of the situation?" Marjorie and Ethan took turns explaining the events: Lisa's birthday, the watch from her parents, and the gradually appearing abnormal symptoms. Detective Branson examined the watch in more detail and took careful notes. Such cases are rare, but they do happen occasionally. Cases where harmful substances are planted in watches or accessories. The blood drained from Marjorie's face at his words. "Harmful substances? I can't be definitive, but judging from your daughter's symptoms, it's possible the watch contains some kind of irritant," the detective continued quietly. "We will keep this as evidence and have it analyzed by specialists. I recommend that your daughter receive medical examination immediately." "I've already contacted the hospital," Ethan said. "They're waiting for us at Memorial Hospital's emergency room." Detective Branson took down the Collins contact information and promised to contact them if there was any additional information. He showed particular interest in the origin of the watch. "The watch was sent from my parents as a birthday present for my daughter," Marjorie said. Her voice was calm, but inside she was churning with anger and anxiety. "Is it possible to contact your parents?" Marjorie nodded. "It is. But I want to take my daughter to the hospital now." Of course, Detective Branson showed understanding and saw the family off. As they left the police station, Marjorie held Lisa tightly. Halfway to the parking lot, she turned back to look at the police station lights. The watch was now being kept as evidence. Was some terrible secret hidden within it? And if there really was a problem with the watch, did her parents know about it? Getting into the car and heading to the hospital, Marjorie's heart was filled with confusion and doubt. Memorial Hospital's emergency room was operating with quiet efficiency despite the late hour. When Marjorie and Ethan arrived, Dr. Carter was already waiting. Marjorie felt grateful that the doctor who had examined Lisa during the day had rushed to the hospital despite it being the middle of the night. "I received a call from the police," Dr. Carter explained as he guided the three to an examination room. "I've heard about the suspicious watch as well." Lisa sat on the examination table, showing a tired expression but seeming more calm than before. The doctor carefully observed the redness on the little girl's arm and conducted several tests. "Judging from the skin reaction, I believe she's come into contact with some kind of irritant," the doctor said as he finished the examination. "Rather than an allergic reaction, it's more likely to be contact dermatitis caused by a chemical substance." "Chemical substance?" Concern seeped into Ethan's voice. Dr. Carter nodded. "Further tests are needed to identify the exact substance. Please allow me to do blood and urine tests. I'd also like to take a sample from the arm tissue." After a series of tests, a nurse gave Lisa a mild sedative, and she soon fell asleep from exhaustion. Marjorie and Ethan waited in the waiting room for the results. "How could my parents do something like this?" Marjorie said in a hoarse voice. "I can't believe it." Ethan squeezed his wife's hand. "Nothing is certain yet. Even if there's a problem with the watch, your father and mother may not have known about it." Marjorie just nodded silently. Doubt and anger swirled within her chest. At 6 in the morning, Dr. Carter returned with the test results. Traces of a mercury compound were detected in Lisa's blood, the doctor said quietly. "The amount is small, not life-threatening, but continued contact could cause more serious symptoms." Marjorie gasped. "Mercury? From the watch?" According to the police's initial analysis, the watch's internal structure had been modified, with a mercury compound planted in the part that contacts the skin, Dr. Carter continued. There's also been contact from Detective Branson, and he'll explain the details. True to his word, 30 minutes later, they met with Detective Branson in a room at the hospital. Lisa was having breakfast with a nurse in another room. The results of the emergency analysis of the watch are in, the detective began his explanation. A mercury compound was applied to the back of the case and part of the band, designed to be absorbed through the skin. This substance was adjusted to be released little by little over time. Deliberately. Ethan's voice trembled with anger. Detective Branson nodded gravely. Undoubtedly intentional. This kind of modification cannot happen by accident. Could you tell me once more in detail how the watch reached your daughter? Marjorie took out her cell phone with shaking hands and showed the detective a photo of the letter from her parents. It was sent from my parents in Florida as a birthday present for my daughter. We need to contact your parents, the detective said with a stern expression. This is clearly a criminal act. Marjorie took a deep breath. I'll contact them. In a quiet room at the hospital, Marjorie dialed her parents' number. It was 7 in the morning, still early in Florida, but Garrett answered the phone immediately. Margie? What is it, at this hour? Her father's voice contained more irritation than concern. I need to talk to you about Lisa's wristwatch, Marjorie said calmly. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. What do you mean? I'm at the police station and the hospital, Dad, Marjorie continued. Lisa's arm has chemical burns. Because mercury was planted in the watch. Silence again. Then, her mother's voice could be heard in the background. Garrett, what happened? After hearing confused voices, Marjorie could hear her parents having a small argument on the other end of the phone. Then, her mother Eleanor took the phone. Marjorie, listen. Her voice was trembling. It was, for your sake. What do you mean? Marjorie raised her voice. We just wanted to save you and our granddaughter. Eleanor began to cry. That man, your husband, isn't worthy of you. He's dragged you into a middle-class life. To think our granddaughter would follow the same fate. Marjorie was at a loss for words. Ethan and the detective were watching her with tense expressions. What are you saying? Are you saying you planted poison in the watch? It's not poison. Eleanor desperately denied. Just a mild irritant. We just wanted Lisa to feel a little unwell, so you would have a reason to come back to Florida. Even the doctor only said there might be a little rash. Doctor? Marjorie asked, trembling with anger. Eleanor explained between sobs. They had contacted a doctor who would accept special consultations and made a plan. They had planted a substance in the watch that would cause mild symptoms in Lisa, a strategy to make Marjorie think a change of environment is necessary. What you've done is criminal, Marjorie said coldly. What if Lisa had suffered serious harm? That wasn't supposed to happen. Eleanor sobbed. I was just about to call you, Mrs. Collins, Detective Branson said quietly. Marjorie nodded and handed the phone to the detective. Mr. and Mrs. Huntington? This is Detective Branson. You are under serious suspicion. I advise you to report to the Ohio State Police immediately. Otherwise, I will have to request an arrest warrant. After the detective hung up the phone, Marjorie rested her head on Ethan's shoulder. I can't believe it, she whispered. They never really understood you. Ethan gently embraced his wife. What's important is that Lisa is safe. At that moment, the nurse brought Lisa in. The girl's color had improved, and the redness on her arm had begun to fade. How are you feeling? Marjorie asked gently. Better, Lisa answered softly. Mom, was Grandpa and Grandma's watch broken? Marjorie looked straight into her daughter's eyes. She hesitated about how to explain, but decided to tell the truth. In words a child could understand. That watch had something bad in it. But Grandpa and Grandma made a mistake. Lisa nodded silently. Although the 7-year-old probably couldn't understand the complexity of the situation, she seemed to sense that something serious had happened. "Can we go home?" she asked in a small voice. "Soon," Marjorie answered, gently stroking her daughter's hair. "To our real home." 6 months later, in an Ohio courthouse in Cleveland, Garrett and Eleanor Huntington were charged with use of harmful substances with intent to harm a child. After a brief court hearing, they received a suspended sentence. The judge, considering their age and lack of prior convictions, imposed 200 hours of community service and weekly psychological counseling rather than prison time. As they descended the courthouse steps, Garrett and Eleanor were bathed in flashes from the press. The two, once respected figures in society, now graced the front pages of local newspapers as grandparents who endangered their granddaughter. Their friends began to distance themselves one by one, and invitations to charity parties ceased. Ironically, due to a stock market crash and a series of failed real estate investments, the Huntingtons were also in financial straits. They who had once intended to rescue their daughter were now desperately trying to rebuild their own lives. And now, they were acutely aware of the fact that Ethan had been secretly providing assistance. That assistance had, understandably, stopped after the incident. Meanwhile, the Collins family was experiencing a new beginning. Ethan's architectural design firm had secured a large contract for an environmentally friendly housing project, bringing financial stability. Marjorie had begun studying to qualify as a child psychotherapist. She wanted to use her experience to help children suffering from difficult family relationships. Lisa was gradually regaining her strength. The psychological trauma from the watch incident was healing little by little, with the help of professional counseling. She had made new friends at school and had become more active in play than before. 8 months after her 7th birthday, the scars on her arm had become almost unnoticeable. 2 weeks before Christmas, Marjorie found a letter in the mailbox. It bore a Florida postmark and was addressed in her parents' handwriting. She hesitated for a long time about whether to open the envelope. When Ethan returned home, they sat at the kitchen table together and slowly opened it. "Dear Marjorie, Ethan, and Lisa," the letter began. "We don't even feel entitled to ask for forgiveness. But there is something we want to tell you. We made a mistake. A terrible, unforgivable mistake. Through daily community service, we are learning humility and compassion for others. In counseling, we are confronting our arrogance and prejudice. Ethan, we blindly ignored what a wonderful husband and father you are. We now deeply appreciate your quiet integrity and generosity. Lisa, we sincerely apologize for hurting you. Marjorie, we don't think you can forgive us. But we pray that someday, there will come a day when we can see you again." Marjorie put down the letter and gazed at the snow scene spreading outside the window. Anger was still deep in her heart, but its intensity was gradually softening. "I need time," she said quietly. Ethan took his wife's hand and gently squeezed it. "There's no need to rush. When you're ready." That evening, while helping Lisa prepare for bed, Marjorie asked her daughter, "Do you ever think about Grandpa and Grandma?" Lisa thought a little and nodded. "Sometimes. But I'm not scared anymore. If you wanted to see them. Can I write a letter to Grandpa and Grandma for Christmas?" Lisa asked an unexpected question. Marjorie was surprised but moved by her daughter's pure heart. "Of course." When she returned to the bedroom, Ethan was drinking coffee in front of the fireplace. Marjorie sat next to her husband and rested her head on his shoulder. "Family is complicated," she murmured. "But we have each other," Ethan answered. "And that's what truly matters." Outside the window, Christmas snow had quietly begun to fall. A warm light illuminated the Collins home, shining in the darkness like a symbol of hope and new beginnings.